taken well where they should be. Our next speaker, Ms. T'riz Delpek, combines extensive academic and government experience. She is an associate researcher at the Center for the Study of International Relations at the Institut de Scientifique Politique in Paris. She was also for many years a member of the Council of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, a known academic institution, and she also, as I said, has much experience in government. She is currently the Director of Strategic Studies at the Atomic Energy Commission and served both as a permanent consultant to the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and as an advisor for a number of years to the French Prime Minister for Political Military Affairs. Many of the discussions regarding Iran discuss, of course, the nuclear issue, and then there are many discussions regarding Iran's ballistic missile program. It's a high-level ballistic missile program, one of the tests we just saw a few days ago. But I think that the combination of the two, indeed, each one on its own, is certainly a matter of concern and potentially destabilization in the area, both ballistic missiles with conventional warheads and certainly any military nuclear development. But the combination of the two, of course, is where the main real challenge lies in terms of Iran's aspirations. So her topic, the Iranian nuclear and ballistic missile program in 2009, tries to combine both these issues, which will be very, very interesting. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, it seems to me at this point in time, I have to thank not only the organizer, but all these poor people sitting in the room who have already had about 14 lectures without the opportunity to say much. So thanks a lot. I was told that I should talk 20 minutes.
No problem.
And not 20, not 30 or 45. So since I understand Israel would like a clear deadline for the discussion with Iran, I will try to stick to the 20 minutes. Okay, my first point is about the following. It seems to me absolutely right to deal with the nuclear and the ballistic missile issue in the wider context that has been retained during this conference. Why? Because, in fact, the nuclear issue has relations, consequences that are very significant in almost all the issues that we have been discussing. Let's take, for instance, democracy. Even if the panelists this morning were right in saying that in 20 years there could be democracy in Iran, nobody said that this would be the case in 2009. But what could very well be the case in 2009, and I will come back to that, is not only that the Iranians would have the necessary quantity for a first device of fissile material, but also that major successes will be there in the area of ballistic missile. Secondly, a second relation to democracy. If the regime is able to show a major success in the nuclear domain, this will strengthen the most radical in Tehran. So there are a number of reasons why the issue of democracy and the issue of nuclear and the nuclear issue has to be dealt with together. Second, if one talks about neighbors, well, one has to take into account what neighbors say and what neighbors do. I mean, for instance, the nuclear dimension is already present in anticipation that nobody will be able to stop Iran, and a number of countries have already second thoughts about how they should change their own defense policy. So this has to be taken into account. There is also, for the neighbors, those who feel defenseless and who even help Iran. Oman has been mentioned. And those who would like to prevent the process from going on, but don't know how to achieve it. Thirdly, concerning neighbor, you have now those who criticize Obama, but the same were before criticizing Bush for having a completely different idea about how to proceed. And if one talks about regional dynamics, we should take into account how nuclear weapons and their introduction might affect the region, including, particularly if one has the ballistic missile dimension in mind, including concerning the American presence in the Middle East. And I can tell you that some worry more about this issue, I mean, what will be the consequences for the American presence in the region, than they do worry about the nuclear program in Iran itself. Now, let's talk about 2009. In 2009, we first have a new political setting with a new Iranian president. Well, here, I'd like to make the following comment. In 2005, when there were elections, presidential elections, the Europeans, and not only the Europeans, also the IAEA, were very careful not to pressure too much Iran, because this was supposed to encourage the radicals. The result of this was that we got Ahmadinejad. It's only something that I want to recall in passing. Now, how significant will be the elections this year? Well, it seems to me, but this is a personal view, that whoever is elected in Iran this year will have almost no effect on the nuclear equation. The second event is the new American president. And here, this is, in my view, much more significant. But we have to take into account that during the second term, George Bush was already open, first, to discussion with the Iranians. He made it clear in 2006 through Condoleezza Rice. Secondly, in 2008, in July, Nick Burns was present in Geneva in the talks with the Iranians. And what he said then was, well, we, America, we are prepared to end 30 years of estrangement with you. And the response to that from Jalili was, certainly not even looking at Nick Burns, was telling Solana, well, we knew all along that America was in the process. That's only to recall some things that are now sidelined because we have a very short memory. But this happened last July. And Bush was also not only reluctant concerning any military action at the end of his term, but he was pursuing a different way. And he made that clear, I understand, in this country. Now, what seems to me equally important and here I speak for some of the remarks that have been made, is not to pass judgment too early about what Obama will or will not achieve. Obama is a new president. He should have time to make his mind on this dossier. And here, I believe we should show some passion. When I say some passions, when I say we, I take the Europeans in this context as well, because our experience is now negotiation with the Iranians since 2003. So as far as what can be achieved diplomatically, we have some ideas. We also know that the Americans have a lot of qualities, but one of them is not to consider that anything can be achieved without their leadership. So they are not going to listen what we can tell about our own experience. So we should give them some time to understand by themselves what could be achieved diplomatically. If you ask me my own view on the subject, I would say not much. Now, and this is a British way of answering the question. Now, there is also a new Israeli Prime Minister. And here, I certainly have no lesson to present, but it seems to me that here as well, it would be wise not to be too quick in either antagonizing the American president or to speak too much about existential threat. Because, you know, if the threat is existential, then you look a bit stupid by not doing anything. Okay, so this is what I would say on the Israeli side. Now, let me say why 2009, and I still have 10 minutes.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
No, I take my own time, which is 20.
Give me another 2-3 minutes if you need.
Okay.
We'll give you.
So, on ballistic missile and on nuclear. Well, concerning the nuclear issue, what is clear and what is important for 2009 is the following. We know already through the IAEA that by March, what was accumulated was about half what the Iranians need in order to have the necessary quantity for a first device. So, taking into account the way the Iranians are producing low-enriched uranium, it's clear that 2009 will be the year where they will have at least the LEU quantity necessary for a first device. Now, the question after that is whether they will go to HEU. The only thing I can tell is that they know how to go there. This is something that is for sure. And secondly, that as far as weaponization is concerned, when you can list all what they have acquired, I mean, including the molding of uranium metal into hemisphere, including the way they have worked on high explosives, it's clear to me that not much is lacking in this area either. So, the issue is more serious because of the ballistic missile dimension. The Iranians have shown in November with the Ashura test, well, now they call it Safil, but is in fact the Ashura missile, have shown the ability to be indigenous, I mean, not to rely any longer on North Korea, which is quite remarkable. And secondly, with the satellite test in January, the OMID test, HOPE, the OMID test, they have shown that they have potentially a very significant capacity in terms of range. I say potentially, and I'm not saying now, but all will depend on the size and the power of the rocket. Now, I believe that this raises a number of important issues, not only in the Middle East, but much beyond. For instance, the third site in Europe, and this is an issue with Russia, for instance. Okay, so you see the very significant dimension of not only what is achieved on the nuclear domain, but what is achieved in the ballistic missile domain. What is sure is that right now the Iranians are proceeding in a much more systematic way and are demonstrating that they are not far from achieving what they want to achieve in both areas. Now, what consequences? It seems to me we should talk about three consequences. Well, first, rockets and centrifuges may be boring, in particular because there is a lot of technicality, but they could be transformational for security, not only regional, but international security. It is the first conclusion. The second one is that Iran's influence in the region and Iran's radicalism at home will be enhanced by achievements in those two domains, including in the region what you call the retreat of secularism. And the third, and here I conclude a bit ahead of my time, that the Middle East is probably the last place where I would like to see nuclear deterrence tested in any crisis. Thank you.
Let me say, I think, Therese, you got your message over very clear, even in the 15 minutes instead of the 20, and I want to thank you for a very concise, clear, non-equivocal, and quite sobering message, which I think was very important to hear from a guest from France. And I think it was really very much appreciated.